Ali Soufan, thanks for joining me on UpFront. Donald Trump has banned people from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States, the so-called Muslim ban. He says he's doing it to protect U.S. national security. His critics say it's a propaganda gift to groups like ISIL. Where do you stand on the Muslim ban and national security?
Blacklisting populations from 7 countries, majority countries in the Muslim world, does not help our national security interest, and it actually works directly into Al-Qaeda and the so-called Islamic State's propaganda. We have to be very careful on trying to create programs that will fire back on us down the road. We already have a robust vetting system for people who are coming to the United States. If you look since 9/11, for example, to include the 9/11 attack, we did not have citizens of these 7 countries participate in any major plot or major attack against the United States. And the reason it is very difficult for people from these 7 countries specifically and from many other countries to come to the United States if they are not vetted properly.
What about the argument from Trump administration officials that ISIL has specifically said in its public statements that it wants to use refugee movements, migrant movements, to get ISIL fighters into Europe, into the United States? So, of course, you have to focus on those refugee and migrant movements, say U.S. officials.
Well, I think this is an easy statement to do, but it's very difficult to verify when you look at the reality. The situation in the United States is very different than Europe. Europe, you have the Schengen, you have people who arrive to the country on boat or, walking from one country to another. They can be resettled without being vetted properly. In the United States, it takes more than 2 years to vet an individual, and even after they are vetted and they come to the United States, they will go through additional security scrutinies before they come to the United States. So we have to be very careful on how we enhance the system. We have to tweak the system that's already in place. We have to put better emphasis on closing the gaps that already exist in the system. I'll give you an example, Mehdi. We have more than 40,000 foreign fighters from around 90 different countries that had joined the conflict zone in Iraq and Syria. We have 7,000 from Russia and the former Soviet republics. We have 5,000 from Europe. We have 6,000 from Tunisia. We have thousands and thousands of places like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Morocco, and other places. So we have to figure out how can we prevent people who fought in the conflict zone, people who are battle-hardened, from coming back and creating havoc. We have to focus on behavior rather than just the blacklisting entire population in 7 countries that their citizens haven't been involved in any major terrorist attack in the United States since 2001, to include 9/11.
Some say that ISIL are celebrating this Muslim ban, this Trump policy. When I asked former CIA Director General Michael Hayden during the election campaign on this show, did he think Trump would end up being a recruiting sergeant for ISIL, Al-Qaeda and the rest, he said yes. Is that a view you share?
Yes, I agree. I agree with Director Hayden on this. And as you've seen recently, ISIS members and ISIS leaders, at least in their propaganda, have been calling President Trump and his ban and his recent policies a godsend. In the immediate aftermath, after the ban, a few groups in Syria, they were funded and trained by the CIA and by the U.S. government, joined allegiances, and they joined al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. Look, we have special troops on the ground, special forces on the ground, we have CT operatives on the ground, we have intel operatives on the ground in places like Yemen, in places like Libya, in places like Syria, and places like Iraq, and it is going to be very difficult for them to build relationship and work on existing relationship, develop existing relationships with people who support us, with people who fight with us, with people who bleed with us, if we actually paintbrush all their nationals as being terrorists and as being bad. We cannot win this war by dealing with our friends the same way we deal with our enemies.
Just on ISIL, how big a threat today does that group pose, specifically to the US mainland? Because Donald Trump and his supporters seem to suggest they're an existential threat to the US. The outgoing Obama administration claimed they'd been degraded and rolled back. Which is it?
Well, you know, I don't believe ISIS is that kind of threat that's going to destroy America and destroy Western civilization. ISIS went from a terrorist organization to an insurgency to a proto-state, and now with all their bravado, we see them going back, you know, a full cycle to an underground organization. Don't get me wrong, ISIS is going to be more dangerous as it dies. They're going to try to create havoc. They're going to try to do terrorist attacks. But we, in the United States, we went through a lot before, and we went through a lot with World War II, with the fight against communism, and a small little terrorist group from Raqqa is not going to make us change our way of life and change our value and change our principles because we fear someone is going to have a machine gun and shoot people in a club. This is disastrous every time it happens. We have to stand up, we have to protect our country, but we have to do it in sync with our principles, in sync with our values. We have been doing that.
Okay, but you say in sync with values, and you know this is not the right way to do things. Yet a lot of Americans who voted for Donald Trump, they hear him in his inauguration speech say that he's going to, quote unquote, eradicate radical Islamic terrorism from the face of the earth. And they say, yeah, that's what we need to do.
Well, that's good slogans when it happens, and you know, a lot of people were hoping that Mr. Trump will change his rhetoric from campaigning to governing. And I think soon they will realize that just calling the threat Islamic extremist terrorism, that does not change the facts on the ground a bit. Actually, it might help groups like Al-Qaeda, groups like ISIS, who have been saying for years, it is a clash of civilization. It is the world against Islam. There is only two tents, the tent of the believers and the tent of the non-believers. And now we're proving that to them with the way we act.
And Trump now has people around him who believe that this is a clash of civilization. Steve Bannon, his chief strategist, has used very similar rhetoric. General Michael Flynn, his national security advisor, says fear of Muslims is rational. Mike Pompeo, his CIA chief, says radical Islam has infiltrated small towns across America. Are these guys helping or hurting the US with this kind of rhetoric?
I think this kind of rhetoric only hurt the U.S., and it hurts the U.S. because it isolates Muslim Americans who are in the United States. It makes them live under a shadow of suspicion, and that's going to help ISIS recruit ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other extremist groups recruit in the United States.
If it's not security, if the ban is not about security, and you've made very clear you don't think it is, it doesn't improve security, then what's it all about? What's driving all of these moves on the part of the Trump administration, on the part of these senior officials? Why are they doing this?
It is very difficult. It's very difficult, Mehdi, to say it's about security when you have a ban that's not supposedly a ban, and then you have a change of policy that now the focus of counter-violent extremism only focus on Muslims and supposedly Muslim extremists, terrorists, whatever the term is. It's very difficult to say that there is not an anti-Muslim sentiment in these policies to cater to a specific base that they probably have in Washington.
Ali Soufan, thanks for joining me on UpFront.